Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Bienvenue. Hello, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of the Canadian Association of Research Libraries and Carl's Advancing Teaching and Learning Committee, it's my pleasure to welcome speakers and participants to today's webinar. There's no AI in team creating and sharing teaching and learning resources for AI skills development. Please note that simultaneous translation into French is available for this session and can be accessed using the interpretation icon in the bottom right corner of your Zoom window. Une traduction simultanée en français est disponible pour cette session et est accessible via l'icône d'interprétation dans le coin inférieur droit de votre écran. My name is Elizabeth Kalflesh. I'm a project officer at CARL. CARL's offices are located on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. I'm mindful of the fact that CARL is a national organization, and members of this library community join us from the unceded territories and homelands of many Indigenous peoples. I live and work in Toronto on the traditional lands of the confederacies of the Wendat people of the island, the Anishinaabe original people, and the Haudenosaunee people of the Longhouse, as well as the Mississaugas of the Credit River of North of Many Mouths, and home today to a rich diversity of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I acknowledge the centrality of the land to Indigenous cultures and worldview. Like many of you, I am excited by the opportunities generative AI offers to library services. With these opportunities, however, come ecological impact and the potential to further marginalize Indigenous knowledge and communities. As I grow my knowledge of Gen AI, I acknowledge the need to continue my learning about Indigenous cultures, protocols, and sovereignty. The organizers of today's call are committed to providing a safe, welcoming, professionally engaging experience for participants. Links to CARL's Code of Conduct will be posted in the chat. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact Susan Hay, CARL Executive Director, whose contact information will also be listed in the chat. Please note today's call is being recorded and the recording will be available on CARL's YouTube page. The call is being moderated by Janice Kung, librarian at the University of Alberta and CARL's Visiting Program Officer for AI and Library Services. Welcome, Janice. I'll turn things over to you now to introduce today's invited speakers.
Great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. It is my pleasure to moderate the session today. We have 4 panelists from 2 institutions. We have Dianne Cmor and Megan Fitzgibbons from Concordia University. We also have Katherine Hanz and Sandy Hervieux from McGill University. They will be introducing us to a suite of 9 micromodules for faculty related to Gen AI. They will also discuss how the modules may be adapted to your own respective institutions. Without further ado, please take it away.
Great. I think that's me who's up first. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're really delighted to be able to share our work and hopefully share our modules with everybody. So we're going to start just with each of us are going to show you little bits and pieces, give you a little bit of a show and tell about the modules, and then we'll get into more about how they were developed and how you might be able to use them. So right off, I'm actually going to share my screen so that you can see, and we'll put links to all of these things going forward. So give me 1 second. I'm going to share and ask somebody to give me a little thumbs up from my team that you can see everything. Yep, great. So this is the suite of modules that is on Concordia's site. The same suite of modules is on the McGill site, and we'll talk about the differences a little bit later. But I thought I'd start just by answering the big question that we get a lot, which is faculty. Why faculty? So you can see our suite is called Gen AI Quick Start Foundations for Faculty. So people ask, why didn't you do more for students? And the answer is simply that we felt that there were some things being developed for students, both at local institutions at the local level, but there really wasn't a lot for faculty specifically for them. And we really want our faculty to be able to lead, to feel empowered to guide the responsible adoption of AI in higher education, to understand the possibilities and the risks, even if they are not AI early adopters. We all have some faculty at our institutions that are right in there, but most of them, though interested, haven't had the time yet, don't really know where to start, etc. Generally, we thought that our students, they'll be fine, not great, but fine, and they will be so much better with thoughtful guidance from their faculty. So that's why we wanted to focus on faculty. Now, I'm going to play our 1-minute introductory module to give you a sense of what it's all about.
Hello and welcome to our course on generative AI. This course aims at helping you gain a foundational level of knowledge about Gen AI. Not a deep dive by any means, but enough to kickstart your conversations, your experimentation, and your further learning. In this call, we have 9 professors who shared their stories to help shape this short course. In exploring several Gen AI topics through the perspectives of these professors, we hope you will be able to see if and how Gen AI might impact your own work. Each of these modules takes less than 10 minutes to complete. This course is primarily designed for faculty who have had little or limited exposure to AI concepts and little or limited experience using Gen AI tools. However, there are also sections that can be valuable for more experienced faculty too.
Okay. So, on this page now, after the introductory video, and when you scroll down, you will see the 9 short modules. Again, you can see they're in a bit different order today. Hold on, I'm going to go over to McGill's for a second. There are a few that are very foundational. Again, what is Gen AI, the types, some tips, responsible use considerations where we do talk about the environmental impacts, bias, etc. Potential uses in teaching, in learning, in research, in general workplace tasks, and then privacy and security considerations. I think I will stop there and hand it on over to my colleague Megan to go further from there.
Great, thank you. Would you be able to open the first module, Dianne? I'm going to talk a little bit about the approach and the learning design for each of the modules. So we'll just launch right into the first one. This is the first module on what is Gen AI. So in each of the modules, it begins by explaining the learning objectives. And then each of the modules is bookended by a little video that introduces or continues those characters, the personas of faculty members that were introduced in the introductory video. And so each one has a conversation between 2 faculty members, or in one case, it's a TA, who are sharing questions or concerns. And these videos are sort of optional to the learning content, but they're meant to spark some kind of interest or some motivation. They often show a gap or a lack of knowledge. These are meant to, again, give a little bit of motivation or intrigue for faculty members to dive into the rest of the content. The next feature to show, in all of the modules, they follow the same structure. The next thing is the brain jogger. And as you go through the modules, you'll see there's a brain jogger, a brain boost, and a brain gain. And so these are sort of easy engagement pieces. They're just short clicks, but they sort of force a little bit of thinking. And they also sort of sneakily have a little bit of content incorporated into the feedback and the questions. And they also help learners feel that they're on the right track to get a little bit of feedback on these very easy sort of engagement pieces. And then the rest of the content you can see as Dianne is going through is sort of chunked into a variety of different formats and layouts to make it digestible and to make it it's short and it makes it easy to go through. So you can see there's some different layouts with graphics. Sometimes there's content that you can click on like hotspots. There are some different sort of graphic layouts. In some cases, there are mini slideshows that can be clicked on. There's audio embedded. All of these different ways that the content is digestible. We also made a conscious choice to not go overboard with too many bells and whistles, again, because the audience is faculty. So we wanted to try to balance making it engaging without sort of overburdening how many times they have to click, trying to not make them annoyed with too many clicks. So then we've reached the end. There's another video. I don't know if you want to show this one, Dianne, just to get a sense of the video. So it returns to the scenario. So we had these two professors at the beginning as well.
I want ChatGPT to generate 5 examples of personas for research simulations on self-disclosure.
So it's returning to the scenario that was shown at the very beginning, but now we're resolving that scenario. So we're seeing in this case how ChatGPT helped this professor who's named Elena. And so we used these final videos to close the scenario, but also in many cases to show a little bit longer demonstration of a tool or to elucidate one of the more difficult concepts. So that's how each of the modules was structured. So now I think I'll pass it over to Sandy.
Great, thank you, Megan. And as Megan just mentioned, there was a very conscious effort to focus on concepts throughout these modules. And we'll see it particularly if we go to the module on potential uses in research. Because as you're probably aware or have experienced in the last year and a half, AI moves very quickly. I feel like every week there's about 50 new tools coming out that we could use. So that's why there was a very conscious choice to not make this, here's how you use this tool, or focus on specific tools. The ones that we do mention, so you may have seen, for example, mentions of ChatGPT in the module that Megan just showed, is really just to help people contextualize the concepts that they are learning. So they have an example that they can build off of, but it is by no means prescriptive, here's how you should use this tool or use this tool, but rather focuses on concepts. So for example, if we look at the one in research, we have the main sections that Megan mentioned, and then we'll go into more how can GenAI tools help in your research. So we'll talk about different stages of the research process, like the literature review, the writing stage, or the analysis stage, and do you want to use GenAI or not, and how could it help in those stages of the research or not, right? So really focusing more on what it can do and how it can do it, as opposed to here's a specific tool that can do this. And then we'll delve into another very important concept for research, which is the responsible use, which is a very kind of broad and big topic, but focuses on concepts that you could apply to any kind of research methods, but very important to think about when we think of AI. So privacy consideration, if we're doing research with human participants, how will you verify your results, right? If you use a tool that is specifically coded to your preferences, how is someone else going to be able to reproduce that as well, or verify what you've been doing? And how will you disclose that you've been using AI in your research? Like, where are you going to put that? How are you going to make other researchers aware of it? How are you going to let them know that they can also use a similar technology for their research? So really focusing on kind of those big questions as opposed to you should use this specific tool for this task. So more broader considerations to think about. And I think I will pass it over to my colleague, Katherine, who will tell us a little bit more about this approach.
Perfect. Thank you, Sandy, and hello, everyone. Yeah, just kind of dovetailing off what Sandy's been talking about and Megan's little demo earlier and Diane's introduction. I just wanted to sort of like bring us back to the idea of these being sort of foundational micro modules. So as Diane said at the beginning, and we saw in that little video, we weren't attempting to do a very like deep dive into any of these topics. The idea is really to provide faculty members or possibly other members of our communities, including librarians, with sort of that basic vocabulary and understanding of Gen AI. And this is to help with conversations, you know, with other faculty members, to help with conversations with students, and maybe to pique a little bit of interest and make folks feel a bit more comfortable about diving into deeper learning opportunities as well. So when Diane approached me about this potential collaboration, that was the piece of it that I found really, really exciting. So we've been talking amongst ourselves about the idea of this being sort of like a white version of this with like customizations, right? So sort of a like a generic version that can then be customizable. So if we look at one of the McGill ones, which we're already in, so potential uses in teaching, you can see in the further learning section, Sandy and I went ahead and added in McGill specific resources here. So generative AI for teaching and learning at McGill. So I mean, you could click on that if you like, Diane, but we don't have to. And you can see here then it links to recommendations from our academic policy committee related to AI. Of course, as Sandy mentioned, in the actual modules, micro modules, we're not recommending any particular tools or endorsing any tools. We're simply showing particular tools just to give some context and to make things make sense. We realize that every institution will have their own guidelines, their own recommendations, their own standards. And so we wanted to create something that didn't just work for McGill and Concordia, because even our two institutions are quite different, but that could work for other institutions as well. And then this section on further learning could be used to enhance the content of the modules and also to customize according to you know, recommendations from your own institution. And you'll see there's lots of interesting things in the further reading, you know, scholarly articles, more popular articles, content from other institutions like UBC, Centennial College, the UNESCO recommendations, and the list continues. And we hope, because as Sandy mentioned, AI changes so quickly, that also with the further learning, the further reading, we'll be able to make updates to this in a really like quick and easy way.
Hey. So that's our quick kind of, you know, show and tell. And so we'll send it back to Janice, I think.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that introduction. I have a few questions for you, and I also see some questions coming in as well, which is wonderful. But I get to start first. That's one of the advantages of being a moderator. How did the project come about, and who was involved?
So I'm going to take that one. Just very briefly, I will acknowledge that we got some funding for this project. So it came about by like, oh, there's a funding opportunity and maybe we should do something on AI and what should we do? And then we started thinking about faculty, et cetera, et cetera. But the project was funded by the Quebec's Ministère de l'Enseignement Supérieur through a Canada-Quebec Agreement on Minority Language Education and Second Language Instruction. Now in Quebec, English is a minority language. So we thought we would get the two Montreal English language universities collaborating together on this. But we have also committed to doing a French version as well, which is in the final stages now. All of the French content and the videos and everything has been completed. So we're happy to say that we wanted to get the English out as quickly as possible when we first finished the English part, but the French will be coming early January. We hope in January for sure. So stay tuned for the French versions. And I'll go back for 1 second to say, like, as mentioned, like, we really believe that from some conversations with our faculty, Megan and I at Concordia, that at least 50%, maybe up to 70% of our faculty needed this foundational training. Whenever we were talking to faculty, you know, there would always be a couple in the room who'd really played a lot with it, but, you know, many in the room who just really did not understand very much about it, even a year or two later. And they were very interested, though. There was no resistance. I mean, there were concerns about the pros and cons and issues, but they were convinced that they needed to learn and were looking for ways to learn. So that's why we really focused again on the faculty. We had a pre-existing relationship with McGill. We had done some AI work together at a conference, and we knew that there was expertise in the McGill Library that we thought would make a great partnership. And the third really major player in this, if you've noticed, the modules are quite beautiful. We think that's not our work. At Concordia, we do have an online course production team called Concordia, and we had done some work with them in the past as well too. So we approached both our McGill partners and Concordia and asked them if they would be willing to play with us. And I will say that though we were putting in for a grant, which we did get in the end, all of them, McGill, Concordia, the Concordia Library, the leadership, everybody was very willing to collaborate on this, whether or not we got the grant or not. It was like, this is something that's important. And so everybody was really, they really deeply believed in the project. And we worked throughout the summer, even though we didn't know whether or not we would, you know, be able to have a grant to help pay for some of our time and efforts.
And it doesn't hurt having that extra bit of funding.
Really.
Can you give us a behind the scenes snapshot into how a module was made?
Yeah, I can address that. So within the initial group that Dianne has just described, we did some of the initial design work. So that included deciding what topics to be covered. So the topics that turned into the 9 modules. So that was a key starting point to decide how we would divide up this topic. We also talked about the approach. So how would we address faculty and what would be the tone? Because that is different from the student audience that is a little bit more familiar in a lot of the work. So once we sort of decided on that, we worked with Concordia to develop the prototype. And we started by working on a template because how we divided it up and how Concordia often works is that they have what they call a SME. We always laugh at this term. It's often used in course design, which is the subject matter expert. And so that's how we did the work, is that we had subject matter experts who sort of wrote a text based on our template. And then that text was then transformed by Concordia into the learning design that you saw. We also, before that though, we also did some work on the graphics in collaboration with Concordia on the look and feel and so on. So once that was all established, then we really had this process of assigning the SMEs to the different topics. And I see some questions coming through about who actually was involved in this. So some of the topics were written by librarians. So some of us who are here on this call, some of our other colleagues within the university. So at Concordia, for example, one of our colleagues in our Center for Teaching and Learning wrote some of the content. We also had support from student librarians in the process in helping to draft some of the content, as well as finding the resources that you see for the further learning. So that was a part of the design process as well. So anyway, so we had the SMEs draft the content, then we had the core team, coordinating team edit, so that we had a similar style, and length, of course, is always important as well. And then once that text was drafted, then the learning designer implemented that in the software that was used. Articulate Rise was what was used to create the content. We had a feedback process back and forth, again, with our coordinating team and the SME to give feedback on the implementation. And then once all of the Rise design work was done, then we needed to implement the website integration of the Rise content onto our website. So that's the process in a nutshell.
Great, thank you so much. And I see several questions in the Q&A, and also my next question, they're very aligned. But how is the resource integrated onto your websites? And can you talk a little bit about how the courses are licensed? What do others need to know in order to implement those modules into their own respective websites?
Yep. So yeah, I see that question coming through. So the modules, or the entire website actually has a CC BY license. So we wanted to have the most open license possible. So it can be used by anyone with attribution. So I don't know if there was a question about how that was decided. Really, it was just our two libraries are very committed to open educational resources and to open in general. So that's why we chose that license. And with the support of our two university librarians at Concordia and McGill, as well as the director of eConcordia also supported that license. So it is the whole site is available. In a second, I'll share the link to where you can download the web package to be able to implement the entire website just as we have it. I see a question too about whether Concordia's and McGill's websites are the same. They mostly are, but we'll talk about in a minute about how you can actually edit the resources. And I also mentioned you can download as a SCORM package if you would like to put just the Rise modules in an LMS, if that is how you would like to use these resources. At McGill and Concordia, we're not using them in that way, but that is also an option. What else should I say? So the modules themselves, so the ones that we just demonstrated, those cannot be edited. They've been exported from the e-learning software, but the surrounding web pages can be edited so that the sort of website components can be changed to have, for example, your library's logo. You can change the wording of the navigation elements as well as the additional resources.
Great, thank you so much. And during the planning process, were there any considerations on maintaining or updating the modules? As was mentioned, that AI is moving very fast.
Yeah, great. I'll take this one for the group. So yeah, as mentioned before, AI changes really quickly. These were not designed to last forever by any means. We hope that sort of with the conceptual approach to this, the way that like Sandy spoke about it before, that the modules may last a couple of years. There's possibly one planned update for spring 2025 if we feel like we need it. But again, we're hoping to kind of keep them fresh and updated by using those like further readings and further resources links. And especially as, you know, guidelines and recommendations change at our own institutions too, to be able to constantly link to those and to other, you know, resources that are being created as well.
Great, thanks, Katherine. And we all really appreciate the CC BY license. Lots of comments on like, this is amazing. Thank you so much. How can we do more of these kinds of projects so that librarians can really walk the walk when we are talking about open educational resources?
That's a really good question. So I'll take this one. Thank you. So I think it's kind of twofold. So like encouraging people to build them, but also encouraging people to reuse what's out there. And sometimes we might think, oh, it's already on a website, I'll just put up a link, but there's actually very compelling evidence. And I think Megan mentioned an example not too long ago of students wanting a library citations guide. Like they want to use the one for their own library. They don't want to use the one from another institution because they're not sure. They don't know if they can trust it. They don't know if it's the same citation styles. So sometimes just adding our own branding can make it just seem more trustworthy to kind of our audience and population. And then you can kind of customize it a little bit within the means of what you have to make it really kind of complementary to your institution. And then you can link out to like if there's other modules or other content at your institution that could be relevant to that. The other side of that is that we do need to create them. And as we know, librarians are very busy. And it might not, you know, if there's no like formal incentive, it can be sometimes a little, you know, difficult to get people to do that. But sometimes it's just finding that one person who's really passionate about it. I know that when Dianne reached out to Katherine mentioned it to me because my research partner and I do a lot of work on AI and we do workshops. And immediately, even if I'm busy, it's like, yes, I will find time to do this. And we had some content already we could kind of adapt and change for this purpose. So sometimes just finding that one person, and if multiple institutions find the one person who's very enthusiastic and passionate about this, then it can link, you know, make a little network of libraries and build a collaboration and make something like this happen. So I think a lot of it was just having like the passion for it and wanting to collaborate together and just making this happen. So finding the champions, I think, is very, very important too.
Yes, I agree. Speaking of champions, how are you promoting these micro modules to faculty? Are you getting those early champions that they're coming back to you and saying, this is amazing, thank you so much? Or have you had any feedback so far?
I can jump in on that one. It's been live on the Concordia site a little longer than on the McGill site. So we sort of got it all. We worked on the content together, but we also worked on the website here at Concordia first and then packaged it up. And McGill was our test case to unpackage it on the website. So that's what we're inviting other people to do as well here today. So because we've had it a little longer, maybe I'll answer that. We had, I'll be honest, our communications at the beginning or the middle of a fall semester are a bit difficult. We've certainly gotten a lot of excellent feedback from the people we've specifically shared with. So I will also say things like when we put in our grant application, we had every dean sign a letter of support. So the deans of all the faculties, the university librarians, etc. So there was a lot of support. The usage we're tracking, but only by Google page views at the moment. So we'll, you know, it's just starting to get going. I think we've just sent out through all of our subject librarians specific emails to the faculty just last week or this week, because now things are starting to wind down. Like now is the time to just do a few of these 10-minute modules. So we hope to see some uptick there. So in terms of promoting, it's through our individual subject librarians. We have a couple of promotional university-wide stories that went out, and then we got some good feedback then. But to be honest, I think the feedback was like, this is amazing that you've done this, but people hadn't actually tried the modules yet. I will say that just for fun, because I say it all the time, we were so lucky to work with these great designers at Concordia that people would immediately go, oh, they're so beautiful. And then we would start to get worried that, oh, they haven't actually tried the modules and maybe they'll be disappointed, like, because they're so beautiful and the content is just good or very good, not amazing. Anyway, we'll see how it goes, but it's quite early days to answer how people are using them and finding them. But certainly we've had excellent feedback so far, and people are really happy to have them available for the faculty.
Absolutely. And I see that the group has been very quick in responding to the questions in the Q&A, which is wonderful. There was a question about, at quick glance, some of the modules seem to be applicable to student learners as well. Do you have any comments on that? Are there any plans to do another set of micro modules for students in the near future, perhaps?
I answered this one in the chat actually, so I'll jump in one more time and then I'm gonna leave.
Oh, sorry, Dianne.
No, it's okay, because it's maybe a great moment to say that, you know, one of our goals for this conversation today is that we're kind of hoping that maybe somebody else who's here today will say, hey, maybe again, the collaboration was great. It was so great working with McGill, so I can highly recommend that if there are other institutions that can identify, well, now if we have something for faculty, maybe somebody else can work on something for students, or go more deeply into one of the topics that we've very foundationally covered. And to maybe think about it in the same way as to how can we make these kind of unbranded white versions so that we can all share them. So we do not have plans today because we really hope that we can get some other people interested in doing this kind of collaborative work that can then be shared widely, I mean, across the country, really.
Exactly.
I will add though that I have had feedback of other people besides faculty using them. Definitely staff is probably the biggest one I've heard from, but I have heard people assigning the modules to students, especially grad students as researchers. Since there are many topics covered, they can be relevant to many audiences, especially the introductory ones. The first 2 or 3 especially are quite relevant to students. So I think they do find multiple audiences, even though we focused so strongly on faculty. I think they're getting wider use than that.
And maybe I'll just jump in too. I think even within our library teams, for staff and librarians who maybe felt a little bit more nervous about Gen AI or felt like they didn't have, the sort of that foundational vocabulary and stuff, I've heard from my own colleagues that they're finding them actually pretty helpful too.
So it definitely has a much broader reach beyond faculty members, which is great. I also personally have recommended to our colleagues in the library system here at the University of Alberta as well, because sometimes I know that library staff, they have difficulty knowing where to begin in terms of just learning about Gen AI. So thank you. Wonderful. And we still have time for questions, so please feel free to type them in the Q&A section. And while you're all thinking about your questions, I have another question for all of you. What are the benefits of working across institutions, and what was difficult?
I can jump in first. I mean, yeah, we were so happy to be included as partners in this. Like when I think I mentioned earlier, when Dianne first approached me with like the sort of concept, it was so exciting, and I just, you know, was really glad to just be involved. We're very lucky because we're just right down the street, so it's one quick metro stop away. So in terms of logistics, it wasn't too tricky for us to work together. I think it was helpful that Dianne kind of came in with a vision, you know, in terms of how it was going to work structurally. So Sandy and I sort of knew right away, like how the partnership would work on our end and sort of what the expectations were for us as like McGill partnering with both Concordia and eConcordia in this case. And I think because that was so clear from the beginning that it made working together quite easy. Yeah. Don't know if others would like to jump into.
I can add to that too, Katherine. Like the expectations were really clear, like the roadmap of where we were going. But also like Dianne made it very clear from the beginning, which I think I very much appreciated, that, you know, we would review the content and, you know, we created some of the content as well, but we didn't have to necessarily review like every little thing in the process, which I think made things much more smooth, because then you don't have like all these like conflicting opinions. Like there's like a shared vision, and there's like specific points at which we gave feedback and were involved. So I think that was really helpful to have like this kind of roadmap of like, okay, this is what's expected, and then this is when we'll call on you to give content or feedback or any of the other things that they needed from us.
Racking my brain trying to think of difficulties, but I can't. So I'll just add that a really key thing was being able to draw on expertise too. And since we don't have all the expertise at Concordia, so it was just so great to be able to draw on the expertise at McGill, especially Sandy and Amanda, being able to add really a depth of knowledge to the resources that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So that was a really great benefit from having the institutions work together.
And I see a question in the Q&A that I presume, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, that when the French content is available, it will be very similar. There will be a link to download the modules, correct?
Yeah, we'll just add it to the same page. So the page right now has a link to 2 versions of the web package that's explained there in the chat. That one version has the full package that we have on our respective websites. One is like a simplified version without the further learning, if anyone prefers that version for some reason. And then there's also 2 different SCORM formats for those who want to use an LMS. Yeah, Diane's showing it now. So there's the 2 different SCORM formats depending on which version your LMS supports. If you want to use it in an LMS, there's the 2 web packages. And then once we have the French versions available, we will also add those to the same page. So that's where they will be when they're ready. That's
great. So helpful. And we still have time for questions. So feel free to type it in the Q&A. And I have another question for you. How long did it take? I don't know if you have already mentioned, I apologize, but I'm just thinking in terms of the hours, the days. How long would you say from conception to having the final modules up on that website? How long did it take all of you?
Okay, can I connect that one back to your last question as well, Janice? I think one of the things that the reason that Megan and I were very clear with Sandy and Katherine about their roles is because we really had a fire under all of us, and they agreed that the need for these modules is yesterday. So often, especially with collaboration, it can take longer. So we didn't want to have, 6 institutions, we thought a couple with our eConcordia partners. So we were trying to work quickly, so that comes back to some things Sandy was saying as well. It was kind of like, here's where we will invite your feedback. We will not invite it on every tiny thing because it will just take us longer. So I would say that we started conceptualizing it in the spring, Megan, am I right? Of 2024, and did the content throughout the summer, and the content and the learning design throughout the summer. So we had, Megan and I met with the eConcordia team weekly. They are a production house, so they actually know how to, you know, make these things move better than librarians, to be honest. So it was very helpful. You know, the project manager had it very well laid out. So really the modules were completed, I would say, throughout the summer. So maybe 4 months, 4 months for all of the content, the design, the brain boost, those quizzes, the back and forth was pretty much complete. And then September was working on the how to integrate it into the website more. So maybe we didn't talk too much about that, but the modules themselves, you know, they can live anywhere, you know, in the LMS, in, you know, whatever. But if you want the same layout, the way we laid it out for Concordia, McGill chose to do the same. People can take one of the downloadables and it will create that whole website for you. But if you prefer to just have the modules and put them in on different pages of your website, you can do that as well. So we took another month or so working on the website, some of just the logistics around all kinds of things. So it wasn't, you know, we were kind of ready to go with Concordias around mid-October. So 4 or 5 months, I would say. Maybe we could have done the last part a little quicker, but then we were in the semester, so it slowed down a little bit, to be honest. So most of the work was done during the summer. And we did have a couple of other subject matter experts outside of the libraries. So we kind of lined them up for, you know, get us your content before you run away for the summer.
Yeah, exactly. And I think based on that time investment and that labor of love, why we can all see why it's so important not to reinvent the wheel, my friends. Let's recycle. And to add to that, do you still see any gaps in the resources, that things that you might want to tie in for your next update that you might be doing in the new year? Any thoughts on that? What's missing?
You nodding, Megan, do you want to go?
Yeah, I don't know that we would want to update anything. Like, this is really meant to be a foundational course that's not meant to overwhelm people. So it's meant to be we keep coming back to the word foundational, like this is the beginning of what you need to know, and then you build on it. So I don't see like adding on to it, but I can see that there's a lot that others could develop further if someone wants to do you know, the next step to add on to this. So definitely, I think the research piece, as Sandy mentioned, like I think that's a huge gap. It's something that we at Concordia want to build on, especially for our grad students. So if, you know, if someone wants to take this and run with an idea, like I think that's an area that is in need of further development, just within our university communities. So it's just an area I think that needs more. I think our colleagues in the teaching and learning spaces are already doing a lot. And so just when I look around at universities, I think that's where a lot of the conversations are already happening for faculty, is in the teaching and learning spaces. So I think it's in the research spaces that are in need of more resources and development.
Sounds good. So if anyone has any spare time, please jump in.
And if anybody has any, like, throw in the chat, like part of my question is, yeah, what else, you know, do we feel we really need? Is it, well, maybe we need 3 deeper modules on research. Maybe we need modules specifically for undergraduate students. Maybe we need, so I don't know, and we have a whole crowd of people here. So I would love just throw in some ideas that maybe the Carl Teaching and Learning Committee and Janice, you in your role, can take a little further for next year. So I'm looking at the chat now.
Yes, so please share. Sharing is caring. And I would be really interested to further those conversations as well on a national level. What other resources could we develop and have that CC BY license so where we're not wasting time, right? Everyone's doing their own thing at their own respective institutions.
Oh, look, we got one already. A module on copyright and AI, both input and output. Totally agree. Deeper there, like we mention it, at a very foundational level in ours, but so much more. I love that idea. We won't hold you to it, whoever put that idea in, but we love it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Any other final thoughts for today before we close? Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions, so thank you everyone for joining. It's wonderful to see such great interest in these modules, and thank you once again to our panelists for sharing with us today these amazing resources, and we hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for coming.